worship this morning. I hope you did. I'm sure you did. That last song we sang, we've never sung before, have we? We have? I didn't know it, but I loved it. And love to sing that some more. In 1989, the crew of the United Airlines Flight 232 was going from Denver to Chicago. And as they were going, the aircraft's tail end exploded. The explosion destroyed all three of the hydraulic systems that steered the plane, or did everything but steer the plane, had to do with steering the plane. And if you were in aviation, you would say at that time, the plane was impossible to steer. It was 185 people on there who were just bound to die. The pilot, Al Haynes, suddenly faced a crisis he's never faced before, of course, and everybody in the plane was hollering and screaming and crying, and you can just imagine what the sound would be if you were on a plane you knew were going down. But he and his co-pilot decided if they're going to land this plane at all, they're going to have to do one thing: quit listening to anything that's going on anywhere else and focus on what they've got to do. So he did that. He focused on that one thing, keeping control of the aircraft, using only one tool that he had left for him that kind of adjusted the engine thrust so the plane's turning over and everything else. And for 40 minutes, he ignored all the distractions, did as best he could to land the plane. And they crash landed in Sioux City, Iowa. The aircraft was totally destroyed, but the 185 people were totally saved. Just because he would not be distracted by something that was going on other than his mission. We saw in chapter 5 of Nehemiah direct threats come to the Israelites, the Jews, as they was rebuilding. Direct threats, some internal problems. And now we turn to chapter 6, and the threats get worse. It's not like they've gotten over it. It's the devil just seems to want to keep attacking a vision that people have. And so he did that in Nehemiah chapter 6. So the first 4 verses, it was focused on, let's see if we can just get him to compromise something. Not necessarily get him to buy into everything we have, but get him to at least compromise with us. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me a message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. The term together seems to carry a significant little amount of information. It's usually when we talk about coming together, it's because we want to be together. We enjoy being together. We want to encourage each other to do what God wants us to do. So this little valley was 20 miles north of Jerusalem, and it was one of the more beautiful valleys that they had to go to. And so he's seeking to bring Nehemiah and his others to this beautiful valley, and let's see what we can talk about. He really wasn't looking for anything helpful, really. He just said, let's work out a plan that we could peacefully coexist. And notice he wanted to go to the valley of Ono. And you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Just take my word for it. When they were scheming to harm me, So I sent messengers to them with this reply: I'm carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Now this is what you're going to love. How did Nehemiah respond to the request to go to the Valley of Ono? Oh no, who said that? Oh, you read it. I thought I had everybody fooled, but he's reading it. He said, oh no, to a meeting at Ono. He knew that this was simply a means of trying to get him to cut back on what he's trying to do, see if there's some way they can compromise the things, so he doesn't leave anything up to a possibility. He realizes that the mission he is on is the mission of God. He knows the vision that he has is the vision of God. And therefore, he's not going to agree to anything that is going to compromise that mission. When we are doing a work of God, there will not be any good that can result from compromising God's vision and God's will. If you're doing something God told you to do, commanded us to do, there is no way that you can compromise any part of it and still be pleasing to God. I remember growing up, it was reported a lot, and most of us would probably remember this, that in political situations, the Republicans and Democrats would come together and try to find an answer to something. And oftentimes they came out and they say, yeah, we made some progress. It didn't get all I wanted, but I got a lot of what I wanted, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems nowadays we're not doing very much of that. We're not getting along that well. But these people knew that you can't compromise. I can't cut back on anything that I'm doing. 4 times they sent this message to Nehemiah. Basic same message. Let's go down to Ono, good valley, pleasing, something where we'll both enjoy some time, and let's see what we can work out together. And we come out of this, and both of us are feeling good about things. And Nehemiah said, oh no. Oh no. In the early 1930s, during the construction of Rockefeller Center, iron workers spent their days up on top of the streets of New York City building this steel framework for the sky breakers. There's a famous photograph in 1932 called the Lunch on a Skyscraper, where the people are just sitting on their skyscraper boat or whatever you call it, board, and they're eating. They're just casually getting along, but they're 850 feet up in the air on this one boat, this one plank. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, beam, thank you. Looking on that beam. And while most people forget when we go by there, or when people go by there and see it, that they see it so beautiful, most people forget how much danger someone had to go through to bring that on. So the work was very dangerous, and they kept up until they finished that whole structure. And I say that just to say, regardless of how much danger we get in, how much we're threatened, regardless of what's being said to us, if we're doing the will of God, we've got to keep doing it. And we cannot allow anything to bring us to compromise. So the change takes place now so that they began some personal attacks on Nehemiah. They're going to say that Nehemiah is not all that he says he is, or you think he is. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me. So it's the 5 times now that he's going to try to get him to meet in Ono. But the fifth time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter. That's significant. In which was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem, you can trust Geshem, can't you? Geshem says it's true that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you're building the wall. A letter that is unsealed in that day simply meant that it is open to everyone. Everyone can read it. Everyone's encouraged to read it. Everyone's got to know the truth about the situation that's going on. So he's got an unsealed letter that he wants everybody to read that places Nehemiah into a position of just really trying to get out of the oversight of Persia. So it just weaponized this rumor that they're planning a revolt. And that's why you're building the wall. That's what they're saying. That's what they're hearing. But Nehemiah, you and I need to meet. We can straighten this thing out. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king. That's pretty significant, isn't it? I mean, if you're under Persia and they're king, and then you get this personal attack going out to everyone that says, the real reason you're wanting to rebuild this wall and get Jerusalem running again is you want to be the king. We know what you're up to. And you've even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so let's meet together. You know that's going to get back to the king. Why are you so foolish that you will not meet with me so that we can get this thing straightened out? Stop your work. Stop it long enough for we can have this valuable meeting. And I'm sure that people would like for God's people to stop their work and have a valuable meeting at times. But if the work comes from God, there is no stopping it. Here's the reply. I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you were saying is happening. You're just making it up in your head. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will be too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed. Now strengthen my hands. Have you noticed how many times the word prayed has been found in Nehemiah? And there are other occasions, we've looked at one and we'll look at another one, where he prays, but it doesn't say he prayed. It's just, you can read it and you know that he's praying. He is constantly praying over and over and over again. So if somebody's accusing you or us about having some evil motive, would it scare you enough to stop what you're doing to try to answer it? It might. But Nehemiah's saying, no, let's don't do that. You know you're on a mission for God. You know what you're doing is what God wants. So don't stop. Would I stop the work of God to get even with them? I'm tired of what they're saying. I'm going to get back at them. The idea of getting even with somebody who has sinned, the only way you can get even with somebody who's sinned is to sin with them. Jesus told us that we forgive. And we forgive those who cast the things against us. And so when we feel like I've got to get even with this guy, I've got to get even with him, what we're saying is basically, I'm going to sin. I'm going to get even. I'm going to say something bad about him. Instead, Nehemiah says, pray. In 1996, a security guard by the name of Richard Jewell discovered a suspicious backpack at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. You remember that, any of us? I remember this happening. He alerted authorities that this backpack was there, and they evacuated the area before the bomb exploded, saving hundreds of lives, of course. At first, everybody was praising him as a hero. But then just a little bit later, a rumor started that he was the one who was behind the whole bomb in the first place and was doing it to get glory for himself. He's really the bomber. It went into the news outlets, quickly spread the accusation everywhere that it was probably him who did it. Reporters camped outside his home. His reputation, of course, was just destroyed overnight. But the truth was that he's done nothing wrong. Everything was exactly what had happened. He had warned them. And years later, when the real bomber was identified, that time he gets cleared of all the stuff that he had to go through. Just because somebody's got to be accused of something, we're not sure. We're not real sure. We're not totally sure. But that's what's going around. That's what, who's the guy, Geshem said? That's what he said. So if we hear it from somebody and it's going around that much, it's got to be true, right? This passage tells us a lot about rumors. The source of a rumor is usually unknown. When you hear a rumor, who was the first one that said anything about that? We have no idea. Rumors are known for exaggeration, better known as gossip. Rumors very seldom just stay at the same that someone had said it the first time. I remember some talk show that they did a skit of this. I can't remember what it was. It was a game show, and they would tell the story to the first person, and they had to tell it all the way through, and how it got exaggerated so much till it really wasn't even the same message. And then rumors are designed to hurt people. Now, we'll go into a little bit more on this. This is where I'm going to spend a little bit of time this morning. Question comes up, do I share this? Do I share this? Here's a rumor that is told to me about James. Do I share it? First of all, I may ask myself, well, is it necessary to share it? What do I accomplish if I share it? Secondly, do I know it's accurate? Am I absolutely 100% sure that what I was just told is accurate? And usually if you ask the person, they'll say, well, I'm not totally sure, but that's what everybody's saying. Will sharing it bring harm to someone or good? Will it bring harm to someone or good if I tell this story about James? I don't know why I'm picking on James. Just seemed like a good guy to pick on. Would I want someone to share it about me? If this was me being told or a story about me going around, would I want that to be shared? I think those are fairly good questions that we need to think about before we would ever pass along a rumor. But here's some others. What do we do when we're told some damaging news? Mary and I were at a friend's house, an elder and his wife's house back in 1970. Yeah. Somewhere around then, when some of you were babies or even not born. And somewhere or another, the conversation got around about rumors, and I can't remember anything more about it except what this elder's wife said to us. She said, have you spoken to that person about that? First statement, she said, if you ever hear a rumor come from someone about someone else that damages that person, the first question you need to ask that person is, have you spoken to them about that? Or to him about that? It's a whole lot easier to speak to somebody else about it, isn't it? If we hear gossip, do we kindly rebuke the gossiper? Do we say maybe the same thing? Well, have you spoken to them about that? Well, if you haven't spoken to them about that, maybe that's the first thing you need to do. What often happens, I told Brother X about Brother Y, and he acted like he didn't care about it at all. Something like that. Or he decided he'd share it with everybody else too. During the ministry of Evangelist D.L. Moody, a woman once approached him after a meeting and began criticizing another person in the church, spoke at length about all the faults and all the bad things that this person does. And Moody stopped and he asked the question, have you spoken to that person directly about this? The woman said no, but she kept on going on and going on. And finally, the woman just protesting that he's not listening to her. And again, he says, if what you say is true, you should go to them. If it's not true, it should not be repeated. And that's where the conversation ended. I'm not trying to suggest anything this morning that we're all gossipers. I would probably say that that doesn't happen very much, although I mistake myself at times. But I would like for us to make sure that we put this character trait on us, that we decide that we'll go talk to that person directly. And we don't go around spreading something that we don't know is true. Then they finally decided they would use some scare tactics. This isn't working, so let's try some scare tactics. One day I went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Deliah, son of Mehetabel, who was shut in at his home. Now this lady, or this man Shemaiah, has a Jewish connection. He was a Gentile that married a Jew. So he's got a connection. He hangs around. He said, let us meet in the house of God, inside the temple. And let's close the temple doors because men are coming to kill you. By night, they are coming to kill you. Sounds like an honest request. People are trying to kill you. Let's get inside the temple. Only problem with that, if Nehemiah had gone into the temple, he's not a priest. He would have sinned, and his whole ministry would have been discredited. So sometimes things that sound like a good way out may have some consequences that say, no, it's not good at all. Not if we're going to discredit God. But I said, should a man like me run away? Or should someone like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Let's go find someone that we can pay that's got the reputation of being a prophet, and he can say these things to him, and we can pay him money, and we'll get to him that way. And it almost worked if Nehemiah hadn't been the man that he was. He had hired him to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. Just realize that one bad report for Nehemiah could have stopped everything. Which says to me, again, as I try to apply these things to myself, I need to be careful about giving someone a bad report. I certainly don't want to deserve a bad report, but I need to be careful about the times I give someone else a bad report. And then he has this prayer. Notice again that it doesn't say he prayed, but it is a prayer. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah and how she and the rest of the prophets were trying to intimidate me. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. Totally completed in 52 days. Noadiah, this Jewish prophetess, did everything she could to get him to stop. But Nehemiah knew the rebuilding was the work of God, so he offered prayer. He said, God, you deal with it. You deal with it. I can't deal with it. You deal with it. I hope that we all have that same kind of disposition. I said this a while ago, trying to get even never gets us even except in sin. So the wall is finished in 52 days. I think I'll just skip that because I don't want to spend too much time. Some points that we need to remember. Stay faithful under pressure. Pressure comes. I can remember a few times. I haven't had that much cast against me, but there have been a couple of times. And the desire to get even really kind of eats at you. But you got to stay faithful under pressure. His enemies tried to distract him, intimidate him, accuse him falsely, but he just simply refused to compromise. He refused to quit. He kept his eyes on God and what God wanted him to do. Did I not go to that a while ago? So stay faithful under pressure. God's work succeeds when his people remain steadfast, joined together, working for the same goals. So today, ask yourself the question, am I climbing down for every distraction, or am I staying at the work God has called me to do? It's easy to get distracted, but do we get distracted, or do we just stay focused on what God wants us to do? Whatever God starts in our lives and in our church, he will finish. Amen. I know there are times when in the stories we've read about in the Old Testament, mostly, that attacks will come or things will come, and that the will of God is set aside. For example, the Israelites under the Persian control had been under control for 70 years because of their own sin. God had to slow down, if you please, the coming of the New Testament kingdom, because for 70-something years, he would have to start rebuilding the people who were going to lead to that. So let's remember to stay faithful. God will finish whatever he has promised to do. If we mess up, it may not be in our lifetime.